Welcome to Unforbidden Truth. I'm Andrew. On this week's episode, I'll be speaking with Washington offender Wendall Adams. Wendell is serving a 25-year prison sentence for assault in the first degree and unlawful possession of a firearm. On July 8, 2012, Everett Peterson went to the Summerwalk Apartments in Kent, Washington to repair a white Chrysler 300M that had broke down in the parking lot with his friend Carolyn Smith and her daughter Shanika, who was dating Wendell, who also happened to be married at the time. The day of the incident, Wendell had been driving the Chrysler earlier in the day. A witness heard Wendell and Everett arguing near a gas station. Shortly after Mr. Peterson started working on the car, Shanika asked him and her mother to help look for Wendell. They knocked door to door in the apartment complex looking for Wendell. Carolyn and Shanika tracked down the maintenance man to figure out which unit he had lived in. They found his apartment and they waited for him to come outside. When he finally opened the door, they wanted to talk to him, to which he closed the door and went back inside. Witnesses claim not long after he went back inside, he came back outside in a white hoodie and found Mr. Peterson and asked him why he was there and what he wanted from him. When things got heated, Carolyn stepped in between them to calm things down, to which Wendell fired off a few shots and one bullet struck Mr. Peterson in the abdomen, and his injuries required extensive surgery. Both Carolyn and Mr. Peterson identified Wendell as the shooter. Wendell was ultimately arrested and charged with first-degree assault while armed with a firearm and one count of unlawful possession of a firearm. He was found guilty and was sentenced to 25 years in prison. Here's my interview with Wendall Adams.
Global Tellink, prepaid call from
Wendell.
Let's talk about your childhood. What was your childhood like growing up?
My childhood growing up was fast-paced, rough, and risky. Being from the High Point projects on the west side of Seattle didn't allow me to enjoy being a child. It was about surviving to live another day.
Do you remember your first positive memory as a child?
My first positive memory as a child was when my grandmother shared with me that she loves me. Growing up, I didn't hear that word a lot.
What about your first negative memory as a child?
My first negative memory as a child was when an SPD officer asked me my name during what they call a routine stop. And I shared my name to him, and he smiled and stated, "I'll make sure you pay for what we couldn't catch your father for." I was 13 years old. Me and my father had the same name.
What were they trying to arrest or charge your father for that they weren't unsuccessful doing?
That part I really can't speak on because I don't know, but I know that my dad has a past as well of being in the street, so that's pretty much what I felt that the SPD officer was saying when they did what they call a routine stop.
What's the extent of your education?
My education has always been above average when I did attend classes. I've always been an intelligent, educated black king. I received my GED in 2009, as well as have a few AAs under my hat with vocational trades as well.
Did you suffer any childhood abuse or trauma?
Childhood abuse, physically, no. Verbally and emotionally, yes. As for trauma, absolutely. The lifestyle I had to endure and the things I experienced and seen would cause for any child to be traumatized at that right age.
Are you able to go into depth about what you saw that was traumatic to you growing up?
Well, like, as far as being from a society where you grow up in poverty and being from the projects and things of that nature, it kind of takes a toll on you. So just navigating through the world where you're young, you're right, you don't really have too many family members out there with you because everybody's doing their own thing. So like just seeing dead bodies when we walk in the neighborhood back in the day, growing up by steps and things of that nature. So that's a traumatizing experience for a child that is trying to navigate his own way in life going forward.
You said that you saw dead bodies as a child. Was it on more than one occasion?
Yeah, it was definitely on more than one occasion. You know, when we just pass through certain places at night where if we're taking shortcuts to go home and things of that nature, then, you know, you just stumble across things and you're like, wow. And then you just keep it moving.
Do you think these were homicide victims or people that might have overdosed or were just left for dead?
I would probably say more of drug use, habits and things of that nature because back in my younger days, that's really more what you've seen of.
How did you feel the first time you saw a dead body? So you said you grew up in the streets. Do you belong to a gang, or did you belong to a gang when you were growing up?
Nah, I'm just from the projects in High Point. I'm just strictly from the projects, and when I say that, of yeah, I'm affiliated with individuals such as that nature, and I mean, it's just the childhood lifestyle that we live. So myself and my partners, as we grow, we become more accustomed to hanging out with a selective few individuals that we know. And police members tied us to gangs, but we've never been part of anything such as them natures.
What was your relationship like with your parents growing up?
To be completely honest, I've never had a relationship with either of my parents. A bond was never established.
Why do you think that was?
Well, it was unfortunate for me that I was kicked out to the streets at 10 years old and I had to pave my own way. So that's why a bond was never established, because I had to navigate life at a ripe age to become what I wanted to become.
Was there a specific reason that your parents kicked you out at the time that you can recall?
Well, I come from a single parent household, which was my mother's household, and I don't know. I can speculate and say it was because she didn't have a great relationship with my father, but I don't know about that part. I just know that a bond was never established.
Do you think if there was a bond established with not only your mother but your father, your life would have turned out different?
I definitely feel that it could have turned out different had I had the right resources and the right people in my corner and things of that nature, because I've always wanted to go to school. I've always wanted to enjoy going to a historical black college, getting my business law degree, and being able to entertain the business world the way that I've always wanted to, because that has been a passion of mine from the beginning of time.
Have you been diagnosed with any mental illnesses that you're aware of?
Empathetically not. I'm perfectly fine.
Did you engage in any type of criminal activity growing up until you were a young adult?
Absolutely. I'm not proud of some of the choices I made, for sure. But what I can say is that all my errors I've made in my younger days, I am correcting them by properly educating myself to overcome the problems I helped bring amongst myself.
Are you able to talk about any of the criminal activity that you engaged in growing up?
Well, just being from the projects, there was things that I partake in, like hustling drugs and things of that nature. So that's a criminal activity. It doesn't have to be anything drastic and major, but just that alone, knowing that if I get caught for that, that can send me to jail or to prison, that's a criminal activity.
And prior to the case in which you're in prison for, did you have any previous charges and or convictions that sent you to jail, juvenile detention, or prison for that matter?
Absolutely. So, as a juvenile, I caught a lot of charges, and they wasn't my charges, but I was so in a rush to get out, I pled guilty to some for 3 days here, 5 days here, and things of that nature without the proper knowledge or help of guidance from the public defender. They say they're there to help you, but really they just want to give you a record and stick you with a crime and a charge, so that way going forward, you will always forever be a product of the pipeline mass incarceration system that has overcame the black communities.
And can you think of anything yourself that could help deter people, from the African American community to not commit crime or to potentially reduce recidivism?
Yes. The first thing that I would like to share with the people is ask for help. And the reason I say ask for help is because I myself wanted to ask for help numerous times, because I understand that I didn't want to go down that route. But when you ask for help to the wrong people that don't have the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding to enlighten you, to put you on the right track, to guide you down the right track, then it feels like you're going up skid road anyway. So don't be afraid to ask for help, and ask the right people for help so that they can position you and place you in the proper educational programs, the proper resources and networks that you need to gain and get to where you want to go.
So I know we talked about you being from a single parent household, but What do you think led you down the path of living a criminal lifestyle at such an early age?
Lack of resources, as well as lack of elders with no knowledge of anything other than the streets. And I say that because when you go to individuals for help, they only can lead you down the path that they know about. So that's why I state lack of resources as well as lack of elders with knowledge.
And at the time, did you know of any resources, or were you willing to look into these resources, or did you just feel like it wasn't worth it?
I didn't know of any resources at that time because when you live in the projects, everybody pretty much know everybody, and everybody was pretty much doing the same things. So not reaching out wasn't because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know where to turn.
So let's talk about the crime you're currently in prison for. You're serving a 25-year sentence for assault in the first degree and unlawful possession of a firearm. Can you tell me everything you remember about that incident?
What I remember about the incident is I was on my way leaving my household to go to the gym to work out. And when I opened my door, the victim in this case jumped off of my railing and he was going to reach for a gun. So I shut the door and I locked it. And then I went out the back so that I could try to go get into my car. And of course, they was out by the car. All I remember was I was trying to get in the car. I seen this individual reach for something and I pulled out my gun and I shot him one time. And then I went and turned myself in.
And do you know the reasoning behind the victim's actions in this case?
That's still a mystery to me because as I learned in trial that from the witnesses of the manager and the maintenance people that are in the apartment complex, they said these guys came to the manager's office asking for me and my wife and my kids' address. And the maintenance dude said that he seen a man in the car with a gun. And then they went knocking door to door. Because I don't even know the victim. I've never even met him but probably twice or three times in my whole entire life, and we've never had a problem.
So you guys never had any outstanding beef or anything prior to the incident that took place?
Never. I actually tried to help that individual get job placement at my job because I'm a personal trainer, and I was running my own fitness gym and my own fitness training program. So I never had a problem with this individual. So it was kind of odd why he would be coming to my place of residence, going to the manager's office, looking for me with a gun.
So after this incident, you're charged and ultimately sentenced, receiving a 25-year sentence in prison. How did you feel when you were handing down your prison sentence?
I felt railroaded. I knew I wasn't represented in a righteous way. I knew I was just fed to the modern day unjust slavery camps, meaning the mass incarceration pipeline of prisons. The worst part of this all, of what made me feel more terrible, was when the judge said at my sentencing that what she just heard from this trial doesn't make sense. But since I didn't testify, she has to go with the government. I told myself at that moment, I'm turning my life around completely. Since that tragic day, I have turned prison into my hidden university, properly educating myself to correct my errors.
So you've been incarcerated going on 9 years now. What does an average day consist of?
My days inside these prison walls consist of educating myself, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically. Keeping a positive and productive attitude is a must for me. I write books as a pastime also, mostly on motivation and inspirational topics. I secure my outside contacts with my sons and significant other on a daily basis. It is very important to me to continue evolving with my loved ones.
Has your family been supportive throughout your entire incarceration?
Yes,
Have you taken any type of rehabilitation classes since being incarcerated?
absolutely. Education is a priority for me every day. I am a certified yoga teacher and taught yoga behind bars for 2 years here, helping my peers tap into their inner self, making changes they thought was never possible due to the lifestyle choices they've made. I've also held the president and vice president of education posts within my tenure in our Toastmasters Club. Within our club, I received my competent communicator and competent leadership certificates. I'm a graduated student and licensed instructor in the Roots of Success program. This program enlightens students on living green as well as protecting our earthly climate. I'm a graduated student and graduated facilitator in the Self-Awareness Redemption Program. I've completed and graduated Inside Out Dads, Inside Out Parenting, and Walking the Line. These courses have given me extra tools to continue being an excellent dad to my sons and remaining a prominent figure in their lives. I've also completed my bookkeeping and accounting course, as well as volunteered help with other programs when needed. I've dedicated my time to rehabilitating myself, my actions, and my choices so that I never have to return to another prison cell again once I am released.
I know you spoke about earlier about wanting to, prior to being incarcerated, wanting to go to school for business. Have you taken any college courses since being in prison? And if you have or haven't, when you're released from prison, are you still going to follow in the footsteps you were prior to being incarcerated?
I'm definitely glad that you asked that question. And yes, I have obtained my small business management AA since I've been incarcerated. And yes, my plan is to continue to go down this path. My plan is to get out from prison. My plan is to get back with the community, whichever community it is that I reside in, and be able to give back to the youth and be able to give back to the people that I feel that I helped bring down the community due to my actions of criminal activities when I did live that lifestyle. So yes, I do want to teach the black community about financial literacy. I do want to teach the black community about the basic skills of living, of what being black and what being comfortable in your own skin means, because I understand that we're targeted and things of that nature. So I do have plans to give back to my community and all of the communities around the world, for that matter, with black folks in it, because I understand what the struggle is. I lived it, I've been through it, and I've been able to overcome it. So why not give back to the young diamonds that's coming before me and after me?
If you could say anything to a kid going down the same path as you were, running the streets, selling drugs, possibly robbing, burglarizing people, what words would you have to say to somebody like that going down the same path as you went?
Give yourself a chance, and don't think that it's soft to ask for help. That's what being a young teenager is about. That's what being a young man about. And ultimately, that's what being an adult is all about. Asking for help, admitting when you don't know something and you need help and you need direction, and allow for the right people that have it to give you guidance, to lead you down the right path.
Before we conclude this interview, is there anything that you would like to talk about that we haven't covered yet?
I think prison reform. And the reason I say prison reform is because a lot of us in here, we go unheard and we get forgotten. But for the people that are fighting out there for us and for the prison justice reform system, keep the fight up. And all that I would add to that is trust in us, connect with us, and let us help be a part of this righteous movement. Because I understand that sometimes we get so wrapped up into certain situations that we forget about the people that's going through it. Allow for us to be a part of this righteous movement, and allow for us to be a part of the help. Because tapping into the inside from the outside world will be able to shed more light on what needs to be done, how it needs to be handled.
That was my interview with Wendall Adams. Thank you for listening.
Unforbidden Truth.